I'm Dana Russell with Kokopelli Real Estate and Property Management, and this is the Kokopelli Connection, where we discuss the history, happenings, and lifestyle of Western Colorado. This fall in Grand Junction, the District 51 school board elections are taking place for 3 separate seats. Today on the Kokopelli Connection, we sit down with Andrea Haitz. Andrea is the incumbent in District C running against Mike Rathbone. Andrea discusses her last 4 years on the school board and what they have accomplished, as well as the many challenges this board has faced. Andrea tells us what prompted the school closures and why the board decided to close Scenic, Nisly Elementary, and Clifton Elementary. We also talk about the state of the schools in Mesa County and what Andrea hopes to achieve if she is reelected. Stay tuned. Thanks for being here, Andrea. Yeah. We're very excited to have you.
Yeah.
So let's start by you telling us about yourself.
Yeah.
Tell us last jobs that you've done, kind of what led up to running for school board, and who you are and your family.
Yeah, sounds good. Well, thank you for having me. So I'm Andrea Haitz. I'm actually a native of Colorado in Grand Junction, was born and raised here. Actually graduated from Central High School and went to Mesa State when it was just a state school. Over the last 15, 16 years, I've been in the real estate world, selling homes, and recently have transitioned more over to commercial real estate. Sat on a few different boards over the years with the Grand Junction Area Realtor Association, and then had sat on the local charter school board for about 6 years. And then in 2021, ended up running for the District 51 school board. So just have been here in the Valley for most of my life, except for a 4-year stint when I met my husband and we moved away to the Midwest while he went to graduate school. So we spent some time out in Iowa and enjoyed our time out there. And then we ended up moving back and started our family when we came back.
And what made you want to run for school board? I feel like that's a big feat. There's a lot of eyes on you. What was your desire to run for school board?
Yeah, so actually, it's kind of a funny story. I was actually part of a parent group that was, actually looking for candidates to help run for school board. And there was actually a different individual that was going to run at that time. And then all of a sudden he was not sure if he was going to run. And my friend was sitting next to me and she kind of elbowed me after this individual said, well, I don't know if I want to run, or if there's somebody better that wants to do it or thinks they want to do it, that would be great. And my friend elbowed me and said, Andrea, you'd be great at this, just having known my past experience. Mm-hmm. And I was like, well, no, I'm all on board for helping somebody else get elected. And so at that time I said, well, I'm going to have to really, think and pray about it, because that was not really the direction I was looking at. I was really going to be more behind the scenes helping someone else get into that position. So I took some time to, think and pray about it. And I really just felt then called to do it. And that was obviously in 2021 when mm-hmm. we were still in the midst of COVID, and we were, kids were in masks, and there was online learning, and there was a lot of frustration around education mm-hmm. and
life in general.
Yeah, life in general. And then there was just even some stuff going on nationally. Maybe not even so much necessarily locally, but there was definitely a fever pitch around what was happening nationally that I think was really getting parents kind of agitated. Mm-hmm. And I think that was just really kind of awakening people to what was happening in the education world. So I was really kind of actually hesitant at first to step into that, because I knew it was going to be a bit tumultuous. And still having all 3 of my kids in school, my 2 older ones were in high school at the time, and my little one was actually just starting school. And so it was really having to kind of think about what that would entail with my family, and also knowing that politically it was really a tough time as well. Yeah. And so I had to really kind of think about it. So at the end of the day, I really just felt like it was a calling and something that I needed to do. And mm-hmm. so And at the end of the day, it ended up working out. So here I am.
And what district do you represent again?
Yeah, so I'm in District C. So there's 5 districts. And the way that works is you only have to live in the district to run. But everyone in basically Mesa County, not all of Mesa County is in District 51. There's a little carve out up towards the town of Mesa. That's actually in a different school district.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
Yeah, but almost all of Mesa County is District 51. Mm-hmm. But you just, but they'll vote for all school board candidates. I know it's a little confusing, but the districts are just for, you have to live in that district in order to run. But everyone that will receive a ballot will vote for all of the school board candidates.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha. So your district does not determine your vote.
No.
It just determines the seat that you run for.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. So there's 3 districts up for this election. It's C, D, and E. Mm-hmm. And then in 2 years, then A and B will be up. And so they always alternate the board seats. So you hopefully don't always have a turnover of an entirely new board.
Okay. So this year, you are running for re-election. Mm-hmm. Angela is running for re-election, and Will is as well. Mm-hmm. And then your opponent, tell us who that is.
Yeah, so my opponent is Mike Rathbone Jr.,
okay.
And so he also lives in District C. Will is in District D, and then Angela is in District E. And so Will's opponent is Casey Cole, and then Angela's opponent is Vicki Woods. And so then we all live in those respective districts.
Okay. So with running for school board, what were some of the challenges that you felt you faced right off the bat in your campaign and then getting into your first term?
Yeah, so obviously COVID was one we were still dealing with. You know, we had gradually had gotten kids right back into the classrooms, which was really good. And but kids were still in masks, and parents were really still struggling with that. The vaccine for adults had come out, but not for kids yet. And then even that was a little bit controversial. What we decided as a board was to just give parents the right to choose. It is not our job as a board to tell parents what they should or shouldn't do. Mm-hmm. It's our job to give parents options. And so at that point, we were just looking, again, all of the information that was trying to come down from the state to our health department, and then for the district to decipher what was coming. We were just at that point looking to say, what can we give our parents? And then can the parents just make the decision of what they feel best is for their individual child? Mm-hmm. And so we were taking that as our board stance to not say, you need to do this or you don't need to do that. Mm-hmm. And we wanted everybody to be respectful for whatever decision each individual parent decided to make for their child, or the families or guardians decided to make. And so that was one of our first big challenges, was just, let the parents make the decisions. And so, so that was the big first one, and we ended up then getting out of masks then in February of 22. Mm-hmm. And so that then helped because we were starting to learn that there were some learning gaps because of facial recognition. Mm-hmm. And so that also then helped. Even though we were in person, it was nice to then not have just the masks in place. But if people still chose to wear them, we wanted to honor that there was no issues if people felt comfortable with that. So that was one of our first challenges. And then when Dr. Hill came on, because Dr. Circo was wrapping up her term as the interim superintendent, mm-hmm. Dr. Hill came in then that summer as our superintendent. Unbeknownst to us, we did not realize what our numbers were looking like, and almost right out of the gate we realized that we were in a real bind financially because our ESSER dollars were then coming to a conclusion, which was our COVID dollars. Also our dollars with the state for our averaging was also kind of starting to change because of our enrollment. And then on top of that, we started to see a trend that we had declining enrollment. Mm-hmm. And so right out of the gate, again, I don't know what superintendent would give a board a recommendation for a school closure, which he did literally months into his first year. Mm-hmm. And then that was our first challenge was with East Middle School. And that was because we were going to have to cut over 40 full-time equivalent.
Yeah.
And that is equal to one teacher, basically over all of the schools. And so that was, that kind of hit us really hard and really fast.
Mm-hmm.
And then we've obviously continued to have that challenge since.
Yeah. The closure of any school has not been taken lightly by parents.
No.
With that first closure, what was some of the decisions that went into making that actual decision to close that?
Yeah. So with the closure of East, we did not have the policy or the procedure in place yet. So because that one kind of came at us hard and fast. That one, we really had to look at where we were financially and how that was going to affect our middle schools across the board, because it was going to affect really dramatically the amount of teachers we were going to have to cut, or staff that our principals were going to have to choose. Because the way that it works is our principals then have to they basically make the decisions of who they are or are not going to hire in their buildings. We don't do that from the administrative level. We basically tell the schools, here's how many students you have, this is your budget, and then they have to decide who they feel is best in their building, because they are the ones that know best what services they need. And so then when they have to start looking at, well, I don't have the funding for the interventionist or this, the therapist or, whoever else, they then have to start making the tough decisions. Or at that point, they were going to have to actually start cutting. So at that point, it was just taking the news out to them. And so at that point, that one kind of came hard and fast. And so we had to look at financially looking at, okay, if we don't take the school offline, what is that doing, again, to basically the entire district, and just how that was going to hit really, really hard. So initially that ended up alleviating and saving about $1.3 million by consolidating the resources. And basically every teacher that stayed and applied for a job found a job. Okay. And honestly, the ones that left, because they were concerned, there were still openings and likely would have found a job. And as long as they were non-probationary and not a new teacher, would have been able to stay, and were secured a position, for a year, because they were non-probationary, and likely would have found a position, in that year's time. So, okay. And that's actually been really the same message since then. That's, as a board, been one thing we've been really concerned with. You have to look at what, in a system, to the point where you can bend but not break, right? So how much can something, or an organization handle to the point, and, that you can make sure everybody's going to be able to find a job, and to, so that we're not necessarily leaving anybody behind. So some people have chosen not to apply for positions. Some people decided to choose to move. Some people chose to take early retirement. We did offer early retirement options, just to kind of help maybe open up some positions. And so there were different things that we would hope would make win-win, options for people. And it did. So it did open up some positions, but for the most part, we've been able to help get everybody a position. So, and again, for those that were not probationary, if they chose to stay on, sure, they might have had to sub for a while, but they could stay on for that year and then keep reapplying for any type of position, if it came up. So, because, say for like a music teacher, you only usually have one music teacher at a school. Yeah. So, and again, there's a lot of movement throughout the year. So you never know what ends up happening. So as far as I know, we also, as a board, were getting a lot of updates. We asked for updates constantly from HR on where everybody was at and how that was going. And so we were making sure that people were getting placed and making sure it was taken care of. So, we had even heard from people that were displaced from East that ended up getting to go to other middle schools that there was some of those changes ended up being really good. The challenge program going to Orchard Mesa Middle School. The kids have enjoyed, going there. They've enjoyed getting to know new friends. Change can be hard. And I even told some of the kids that, that's kind of one of the only constants in life is that there's always going to be change. Yes. And so if you can learn how to adapt and adjust to it, you'll just be better off in life. And again, I don't want to close schools. Nobody ever wants to do it. It's very, very hard. But it was something that if we didn't do or make some of these decisions, I think we would have been worse the wear, especially after what happened this last year with the budget from the state. We likely would have had to basically done a reduction in force, which is what you call a RIF, a reduction in force, which would have been laying off teachers. And to me, that's what concerns me much more, because we are not like Denver, where you can still live here and just drive a little bit and go to work in a different district. And especially with the way the real estate market is now, with the way interest rates are, it's not as easy to just sell your house and then try to go somewhere else. And so, some people have done it, but it concerns me thinking about a larger picture for, an individual or with their family, to think that if we had to lay them off or do that reduction, that they would have to upend their whole life and their family to go somewhere else. It's not, we're not like the Front Range. I mean, sure, they could maybe try to go to, Delta or somewhere else, but that's a lot, and that puts extra added stress. And so we were looking at a lot of those things as a board and trying to think about what could we do to try to not get to that extreme.
So with, I believe it was Orchard Ave Elementary. That was one that was
the first time.
Yes.
Yeah.
That one, and correct me if I'm wrong, parents were very concerned about that school closure because that was a top performing school. And so do things like that where they're a top performing school, budgets, what all goes into making that decision? Yeah.
So no, that's a great question. So what ended up happening the first time, was we were looking at...
And just to clarify, it was... I can't even remember. No, I always get East and West confused as to what middle school.
So East was closed first. Yep. And then the first recommendation was Orchard Avenue, Lincoln, Orchard Mesa. And was it
Scenic?
And then, no, it wasn't Scenic. It was Orchard Avenue, Lincoln OM, and... Was that it? No.
I thought there was 3. But I can't remember.
There was. What am I think? Which one am I missing? Gosh, no.
It'll come to you at like 3 a.m.
Yeah, which one am I missing? Orchard Avenue.
Nisly was in the second group.
Yeah. What am I missing? The first one. Because I'm trying to think of where. Because we had Orchard Avenue. And we were looking at Orchard Mesa, because I'm trying to think of where we had locations of where we were looking at, because we were looking at numbers. Gosh, where was the third one? Because I went and visited them all. Maybe it was only... Yeah, I think we only did 2 the first time.
There's been a lot going on in between, so I don't blame you if you can't remember.
I think we were thinking about 3, and then we did 2. We thought about doing 3, and then they only recommended 2. And then, that's right, because we thought it was going to be 3, then they only recommended 2, and then this next go around, we said, you better be really sure about what you're going to recommend. Yeah, so it only ended up being 2. We thought it was going to be 3.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think it was only Orchard Ave and Lincoln OM.
Okay.
Yeah, so after East, when the district came back and made a recommendation to the board, then it was Orchard Avenue, and Lincoln Orchard Mesa. And so when, the board at that point, it was recommended to then put a committee together. And so, so some of the concerns that came out was, that there was a performance school, and there's a lot of factors that go into it. So some of the age of the school buildings, some of it was just safety of this buildings, because like Lincoln OM at the time is really close to the road, if you've ever been up there. And then Orchard Avenue Elementary was just an older building. And so there was a lot that kind of came at the board at that time. So at that point, the board pumped the brakes and we decided to put the committee together, which was the elementary declining enrollment committee. So that ended up becoming a really robust committee where we had teachers, principals, community members, and some admin. And then we had 2 board liaisons, board members that were liaisons. And that was Dr. Schultes and then Director Lima. And so they just went there to basically just listen, not necessarily participate, but just be able to observe and listen to the whole process. They met for hours. I mean, I don't even know how many meetings they had, but they met for a really long time. So we tried to get different people from the municipalities so that we could just really think about like roads and safety, and then we had principals that came in because, again, principals are the ones determining the cuts they'd have to make in their buildings, and we wanted teachers in there because we needed to hear from teachers and what would be happening with, again, from class size to what resources they don't have, because, again, if they don't have the resources in their buildings, and then just, again, parents, again, just in the community. So we wanted to make sure we just had a really diverse group in that committee. So that committee met for a really long time. There was a lot of care that was put into that committee as far as it was twofold. They were tasked with looking at criteria of what it would take to basically shutter a school, and then criteria for what could we do to help bolster the district that could either bring students back into the district, so like magnet schools, going out for bond and mills, or other things that would help, just with the district. And so they looked at both of those things. And all of this is on the District 51 website. So we now have a full closure criteria, so that we use that now as our procedure, which is what we used this last time when it came to Scenic and Clifton. Now, Nisly was a little bit of an outlier because they were on the clock with the state as far as performance. So Nisly ended up being the 3rd school. So basically they bumped off a school because we had to look at them because the state was either going to close them on performance, or we as a district had to do something because they were the 5th year on the clock because of their performance. And so when that happens, as a district, you're required to either let the state come in and take over doing something with that school, or you can close it, and you have to then show that you're putting those kids into higher performing schools, because then those students have to be put into better performing schools. So Nisly was a little bit of an outlier, but it basically bumped a third school off of a closure. So 3 schools were closed, but Nisly was a little bit of a caveat. So with that, with the closure process, they looked at different criteria and they weighted that criteria. And so they looked through a bunch of different options, from building adequacy to, educational space to, honestly, performance of the school ended up ranking rather low because it's a little bit objective, because they kind of figured, and again, this is all on the website, and it's actually even explained, because they kind of figured that as you move students and teachers, performance can actually move. Again, if you have great teachers and they can raise students, they figured performance could actually move. So, and again, that's not to say that having a great performance school is not something to be celebrated. But with that committee, they didn't actually rank it as high as some thought they would. Building adequacy actually ended up ranking rather high. At the same time that we were doing that whole committee, we ended up simultaneously doing our 25-year long-range facilities plan, which had never been done in the district before. We'd always done some short-term ones, but never on all of our facilities. Mm-hmm. And that was something as a board when we first ran that we really committed to, because you can't go out to your community and keep asking for bond dollars, which, by the way, we don't get any of that money from the state. Bond dollars are like dollars you can use for like your house. That's like more like just like construction dollars. Mm-hmm. You can't use bond dollars to pay for teachers' wages. They are only dollars you can use for capital improvements, and we get none of those dollars from the state. Those have to come from your local community. So you can't keep going out and asking that from your community if you don't feel like you have a plan. Mm-hmm. You know, and being in real estate, it's like, and having my own investments, it's like, well, if I have a house right now, I know if my roof is new, I know in about 25 years, I'm going to probably have to replace a roof, barring any, big events. Right. Yeah. So I need to plan and save that I'm going to have to replace that roof. Well, we've never had a plan in place with all of the buildings that we have to make sure that we can do that. And again, since we don't make our own money and we got to rely on the taxpayers, we needed to put a good plan in place. Mm-hmm. And Littleton has actually done a really good job of this. And so we did a big 25-year range plan. So now we have a really good plan on all of our buildings. So we had FCI go through with the architect. They literally went through all of our buildings thoroughly and have gone through them. And this is all also on our website. And so you can see the condition of every single one of our buildings, from admin to all of our schools, mm-hmm. and see the condition and what we're going to need to do on all of our buildings, which is what we're doing right now since we passed the 24 bond, which we're very thankful for. And you can see all of the phase work that we need to do on every building. And so this will help with the longevity of all the buildings. Mm-hmm. And now we can be a good steward of all the buildings that we have. So we were doing that simultaneously with the declining enrollment committee. And so that ended up playing a huge role when everyone felt like, hey, building adequacy is really big. Mm-hmm. Because are we going to continue to put money into a building that's not worth putting money into? Yeah. Or should we do something a little bit different, mm-hmm. When it comes to that? And so when they came up with the 5 criteria, then they ended up weighting them. And then when they looked at everything, they weighted them. And the board asked Dr. Hill, when they put that all together, when we first initially saw the information, we didn't even want to see the school name. So when we first saw the list, we didn't even know which school it was. We just saw all the criteria, and they showed us, like, again, what was the building adequacy, what was the educational space, like usability, and then the other criteria. And then we just saw kind of how it was weighted. So at first, when like Scenic and Clifton and Nisly, again, was a caveat. We knew, but when we first saw Scenic and Clifton, we didn't know it was Scenic and Clifton. Okay. And so we just looked at that first. So we just wanted to be very objective about looking at, like, okay, this was what the declining enrollment committee had put with the procedure. We looked at it and didn't know which school it was. And we're like, okay, this is looking at the information. And then obviously as we then got down to it, and then the district made the recommendation to the board, we obviously then at some point had to see the schools. But initially we just wanted to be able to look at it just based off of the criteria. Yeah. And go from there. Mm-hmm. Then obviously you have to then go and start telling the community and having those conversations. And obviously once Dr. Hill made the recommendation to the board, obviously then the community knew. So, yeah, so at that point we, then we just went from there. So we also then at that time made a policy, because I was like, if we don't have a closure policy, what then is like, what triggers declining enrollment for like the next board or superintendent? Yeah. So we got to start putting some parameters in place, because I didn't want any other board after us to start, like, we really kind of came at this in the dark. Mm-hmm. It was like, where are we starting? What are we doing? I called Jeffco's board, because they were going through this a little bit ahead of us, and asking them, like, hey, what are you doing? And they kind of gave us like, well, don't do this, do this. And so, again, we weren't the only ones going through this. And so I, again, was just trying to get as much information as we could to just say, okay, what's helpful, what's not, what helps your community, what's not helpful for your community, in just really kind of relaying information. And so we were definitely trying to kind of learn, and we learned as we went. We went and asked a bunch of the teachers from East, like, what was helpful, what was not. We literally took all that feedback and just said, okay, we're going to learn from it. We certainly didn't do some things great. And there was a lot of also misunderstandings there as well. Some people were frustrated the board didn't show up. The board didn't know they wanted us to show up. So there was obviously some cross that way. We didn't know they wanted us to show up. And so also Dr. Hill had showed up at East and was waiting, and then he was told to not come in, and they didn't know that he was outside waiting, that he could come in. So there was a lot of miscommunications, and that's okay. There's no one to blame. It was new for everybody. But maybe if people had known that the board was willing to come and that Dr. Hill was outside waiting, because I think some people wanted to see him. Obviously, some people didn't. It meant more to some people and not to others. So anyways, we took all of that to heart. So when the other schools were taken into consideration, and in the middle of this, we also did the reconfiguration in Fruita. Remember, that was the other one.
Yes.
So the Fruita wanted to go back to a 6-8 and a 9-12, and that also got contentious. I forgot about that. Oh gosh. So
and you're building a high school too.
Yes, and so the board showed up. So when Dr. Hill actually gave the information to staff, we went as a board. We were like, okay, we heard from East that they wanted to see leadership there, so we went because we had heard that from East. So that when they wanted to vent, they got to vent, and leadership was there. Because we had heard when we went out to tell Lincoln, Orchard Mesa, and Orchard Avenue that it wasn't coming from Dr. Hill, they didn't like that. Well, obviously Dr. Hill couldn't be in two places at once.
Right.
So then when we went out this last time, we had to do it at 3 different times. Well, then they were upset that it was like one day after the other after the other. And we told them the reason we did that was because the first time everyone was upset that it wasn't coming from the top of leadership. So again, there's no right way of doing it, but we had taken it from the people before who had experienced it, and we were just trying to do it the best we can. There's no great way to deliver bad news. So, but again, we just took the feedback and did the best that we could with it. So anyways, now we have a procedure and a policy in place for school closure and declining enrollment. Is it perfect? Absolutely not. It could probably be tweaked, but it's what we have to go off of right now. And so I would say it doesn't favor performance. It doesn't favor declining schools. I feel it's fairly objective. And again, this was something that was basically decided on by a diverse group of people, from principals to teachers to community members, that decided that they felt like this was the best way to kind of evaluate what it needs to look like to shutter a school. So,
what can you give us an update on each of the buildings, just what they're being used for, what the future plan is for them? Yeah, so just a few weeks ago, our Chief Operations Officer gave us an update on East, and East is, we just went to the city, and East is going to be used as an administrative building. We've been running truancy out of there, but right now, we have our admin team kind of spread out all over town. We're also paying a fairly big lease out at the Compass building off of Horizon Drive. And so we could terminate that lease and save money there. We also could sell off a couple of other really old administrative buildings. And these are all people that work within the same department. And we could consolidate them all at the East building. Okay. And then so they would all be centrally located. It'll still kind of look and feel
the same as East is. Actually, the gym is still going to be used for girls' sports, which we use the Central Girls Wrestling Team. So that whole part of the school is still going to be utilized for the community and for sports. The classroom side is just going to be renovated for offices, and that plan was presented to the board a few weeks ago. Some parking is going to be modified so that there's not going to be parallel parking. It'll be diagonal parking to not kind of clutter up or convolute the neighborhood there. But it'll still look and feel like a school. Just won't be a lot of kids there. And so it'll still be a district building because we own it, or the taxpayers own it. And it'll still get to be utilized, the gym and everywhere. So we're going to use it as an admin building, and then we can sell those other old buildings that we have, save those dollars, put that into other capital improvements, and then get rid of the lease and save the money that we've been spending on the lease. Yeah. So that's what's going to happen with East. Clifton Elementary, there's some interest in that building. I can't quite say what it is yet, but that'll be coming out. But likely somebody in that area will be able to utilize that building for something that'll be good for that area. We don't have any clue what's going to happen with Scenic right now. There's been nothing presented with that. And Nisly, we have some preschool stuff happening there because that Nisly building it wasn't old. It wasn't shuttered for being an older building. So we're still utilizing that building for a lot of district services and schoolrooms. And then, so that's what we're doing with all the buildings so far.
Okay. Very interesting.
Yeah, but we'll make sure that as soon as something official is done with the buildings, we're making sure that they report it out to the board because we know that the community really wants to know, and we want to get that information out as soon as possible. But we're not going to let them go to blight. They're not going to get boarded up. And if they can still be utilized, the taxpayer owns them, and if they can be utilized for something that is like for the community, then that would be ideal. Or we'll make sure that that the money is going to be utilized for something to go back into the district. Touching
a little bit on the Fruta rezoning, what was the thought behind that? Where did that come from?
In regards to with the elementary schools or with
the boundary changes and just kind of putting the middle school back to 6, 7, 8.
Oh yeah,
high
that
school.
one. Yeah. Well, so we had gone out and done a survey with the community there, and there was a big push to wanting to go back to the traditional 6 through 8 middle school and 9 through 12 high school.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but Fruta was one of 2 in the country to have
an 8-9.
An 8-9 building.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, there's only one back east. I think that's an 8-9. Now, when we did the 8-9 school 18 years ago, it was supposed to be the 6 through 8 middle school. And then it never changed. Okay. And so I don't know why it never changed to a 6 through 8 middle school. Maybe we just thought it was going well and then we never changed it. So here's how schools work with the state. The school is not the building. The school is just, it's the principal and the kids. And so each school has a number. And so it's not necessarily the building. So the challenge in Fruta was we needed the middle school. And so we already had a middle school established, which was Fruta Middle School. But the 8-9 building was newer, but we didn't need the 8-9 program. So we needed to take that program offline. Okay. And so I know the frustration in the community there was, well, take the middle school offline and keep the 8-9 because they wanted to keep the building. But we can't do that because the state won't let you do that because if we needed a technical middle school, we already had one. And the middle school was already the principal and the kids that we had in the middle school building. But the middle school is not the building. The middle school is the people. Yeah. And so we needed to move the people to the 8-9 building. And so there was some frustration and confusion, and I totally get that.
Yeah.
But again, that was the plan some 18 years ago, was that was supposed to be the 6 through 8 middle school. And so they wanted to, what they were imploring the board to do, and again, I totally understand it, was let's just rename it. Like, let's do a whole new school. And not have a Fruita Middle and not have a Fruita 8-9, but let's do something totally new. Well, and so they wanted us to take both schools offline and do something new. Well, we can't do that with the state. The state doesn't like that. They might think that you're trying to finagle something. And then you also lose all of like your data with the schools with that. And so and then they're also kind of wondering what you're doing with that. And when we told them that your purpose is that we're taking the 8-9 off. We're consolidating that to go to the, the traditional model.
Yeah.
I get why they wanted to do it. And I think I like the idea, but we can't do that with the state.
Yeah.
They're like, nope, you already have a middle school. You can't try to then take the two and combine. So great idea, but our hands were tied with doing that at the state level. So, so that was even something new I learned. I didn't know each school sort of has this like number, and that's the way you do it. So, again, everybody who wanted the job, and again, it was more of just about trying to keep kind of people together. But again, we offered early retirement to the Fruita Middle School staff, so that, and then people, I believe people got jobs at Fruita Monument High School. People got jobs at Fruita Middle School. I believe everybody who wanted to try to get the jobs where they wanted were able to get it for the most part. Again, not perfect, but I think it worked out, as best as it could. So, the boundary change, we ended up trying to kind of adjust, try to get what we really look at when we're doing any kind of boundary change is you're trying to just look at like what schools best feed in. So elementary schools into middle schools, and then middle schools into high schools. And you're trying not to get too far out. Like if one school is really close to another school, you're not trying to get those kids to then go too far out from a school that may be particularly close. And so, and again, as areas kind of grow, like we've had in years past, Fruita's really grown, districts always have to kind of readjust those boundaries, because we also have to look at like what schools have capacity, and you have to just make those boundary adjustments. So I know it can be frustrating, because I've had a lot of people even in the real estate world say, well, I bought my house because I wanted my kids to go here. And I always warn people like, listen, it can always change. But we do have school of choice, which is always great. And we did grandfather a lot of kids into Fruita Monument High School when we made those boundary changes. And so we try to do the best we can with trying to keep kids where they want to go. And again, parents can school of choice in, which I think is awesome. Not every state has that. A lot of times where you live is where you have to go. And so we try to accommodate those things. I will tell you, after we grandfathered all those kids out into Fruita Monument High School, they didn't end up going, and that's why Junction's so packed. Fruita's down like 200 kids.
Oh, is it really? Oh, wow.
And then Junction's packed, because then so we had a lot of people, concerned, and now
it's changed.
Yeah, and that's fine. And a lot of people wanted to go to the new high school, but we gave the accommodation for people to be able to go to Fruita, and they decided to not do that. So Fruita's down a little bit, and then Junction's more full. So again, if people want to have the opportunity to go out to Fruita, and again, I had parents really concerned that they weren't going to be able to school of choice into Fruita. Well, they could school of choice into Fruita Monument High School right now, because there's space. Okay. Because the people we grandfathered in, some of them did not take advantage of that. So, yeah. So,
sticking on the topic of declining enrollment, tell me, as a school board member, what do you feel has contributed to D51's declining enrollment?
Well, so there's a few different factors. So when we've had the district pull the numbers for us, so we constantly are tracking the numbers, there's a few different things. We are in and out migration of our kids. So when the district tracks where kids are coming in to the district, or when kids are leaving the district, We have a lot of kids leaving the district out of state. And we have very few kids coming into the district out of state. That is our biggest factor.
Okay.
Now, there's a narrative out there that we're losing a lot of kids to charter schools, private schools, and homeschools.
Yep.
And I'll tell you right now, I have the data and I can send it to anybody. It is a net zero. As many kids leave for those options, we have equally as many kids come back to the district, and is literally a net zero.
Okay.
There's just a lot of movement that goes back and forth. So that is not the case. We have most of our kids leaving to go out of state.
Okay.
And then also declining birth rates.
Yep.
Mesa County Health Department did their own study about a year and a half or so ago, and you can see the birth trends even in Mesa County are declining, which means anybody who's had, all the babies born even in the last few years, as they are going to be 5 years, our kindergartners, coming up, those core cohorts of kids are just smaller.
Yeah.
And so we're going to have smaller class sizes coming up, which just means and the way the state funds us is per pupil. And so we are just going to have less dollars. So those class sizes are going to just be smaller. So we were upwards of 22,000 students, 4 or 5 years ago, and now we're at 19,000 students. And the demographer, when they did the numbers, said we're going to continue to decline until 2030, and then we might level out. We don't know when we may start to increase. So it's declining birth rates, and people are just moving out of state. So that is really kind of the two bigger factors. But when you look at other educational options, and I'll tell you, I have people from both political sides of the aisle that say for very different reasons that we're losing kids to different educational options. Yeah. And that is not the case. And I have the data to show it, that as many leave for other options, they come back into the district for a various reasons. So that's a net zero.
Okay.
So
interesting.
Yep. I just had Dr. Hill pull those numbers for me 2 weeks ago.
Okay.
So it's not charter schools, homeschools, or private schools.
Okay.
They leave and then come back for whatever reasons. They might start there in elementary school and then they come in high school, or they start there for a while and then they come back, or then they'll go, people there's a lot of movement in Mesa County. You'd be surprised, even in just our own schools. So
is this a trend throughout the state?
I would say so, except for in pockets. Like St. Vrain is growing, and like Weld County is growing. There's only like a couple districts that are growing. Okay. But I would say for the most part, everybody, And it's not for other educational options. Because I sit on the CASB school board, the Colorado Association of School Boards. I'm the Region 10 director for like the Western Slope. So I'm on a board of like 20 some other school board directors. And so we do talk about declining enrollment over there as well. And they're seeing the same trends. People are just leaving Colorado. Okay. Families with kids are leaving Colorado.
Do you know where they're going?
Texas, Tennessee, Florida, Wyoming.
Okay.
Where there's jobs for young families.
Gotcha. So is the school board forecasting their financials for a decline?
Yeah. We're probably down. We're down more students this year. So unfortunately, I don't think school closures are over. I wish they were. Gotcha. Which is why I have no clue why I'm running again, and I have no clue why anybody else is running. So to be quite honest, so you want to know why I'm running again, I actually really had to think hard about it, because the challenges are really not over. Yeah. And it's hard. I had friends I had to, look in the eyes, that their kids were going to those schools. I went to Nisly. It was hard to, shutter a school that I went to, and it's, and I grew up in this community, and it's just hard in and of itself, right? It's like, I know these teachers, I've been in every school, I've met every principal. And I wanted to do that because I don't want this to be, again, like we were talking earlier, I don't want this to be such a detached decision.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you want to understand that there's the humanity behind it.
Mm-hmm.
You also have to realize that, like, you're making a decision for also 19 other thousand students and 3,000 other employees. And this is an organization that we have to make sure continues to thrive, because school districts can go bankrupt.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you know, it's a lot that weighs on your shoulders.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's, like I said, while we've had amazing successes over the last 4 years, like you said, and with the state budget the way it is, and the majority of our funding does come from the state, we still do have some challenges ahead of us and some tough decisions. So I'm hoping that we can get through them here, maybe in the next year or so, and then maybe we're can then be just kind of quiet for a little bit and be steady. But I think we still are going to have a couple more things we're going to have to deal with.
Yeah. Well, I have a few more questions because I really want to respect your time. I know you're a very busy person.
Good. I know. There's a lot to talk about.
There is, yes. Yeah. We'll have to have you back for another episode.
Yeah, I know. There's a lot.
So we've talked a lot about challenges that you've had, but I don't want that to overshadow some of the successes, because you guys have put in a ton of hard work. So there's got to be something that has been fruitful from your first term on the school board. So tell me some of the successes that you guys have had this year, you feel that you've had personally being on the school board. Yeah.
Well, honestly, there's been so much great stuff. I have to say, like, even in the midst of challenges, you know, there's always a silver lining, right? There's kind of like the phoenix, right? There's always something great that can come out of it. So, because when you're consolidating the schools, what we're really doing is you're consolidating the resources so the schools can have more to do with. Yeah. And so some really great things that we've seen is, we're making historic gains with the academics. And so when we first came on, we returned back to a science of reading curriculum, which we're seeing, you know, with these gains this last year. So what we're seeing from the academic success was last year's test scores. So keep in mind, this is before the schools were closed from last year. So this is taking into account all of the other schools. So we weren't playing a system or anything like that. So we returned to a science of reading curriculum. So our third graders and fifth graders are doing really good in their math and reading. And we are scoring higher in all of these sections more than we ever have. Our graduation rates year over year, we've graduated more students, you know, more than we ever have, which is really exciting. Yeah. And we're not just pushing kids through, like we're graduating kids and we're getting them more career ready. There's always more work to do, just like in any organization, but it's really exciting to see those gains. Financially, we are in a much better situation. When we first came in, our reserves were really, really low. I mean, dangerously low. And now we have better reserves that put us in a much healthier position, that when we have challenges, we can have a much softer landing, that if the state does jar us with something, we can make sure we can take care of our people, because that's what reserves do, right? They're a rainy day fund that help us have a little bit of a softer landing to prepare for something, and that helps us take care of our people. And so we're excited about that. We have that long range facilities plan now that we now can go out to our local community and make a better argument when we do need some help. Because, you know, people have even said it's been hard to sometimes get things passed locally. And I think that's because I think in the past we haven't necessarily shown them that we've had a good plan. Right. And so we're really trying to make sure that we can show them that we're organized, we have a plan, and we've also cinched our own belt. We've made 1.3 million cuts in central administrative, office. And again, people don't always know that, but even we've done that in the central administration part as well. So, we haven't backfilled positions. That doesn't mean we've let people go, but when people have, retired, we just haven't rehired for those positions. And so we've done a lot lot of things on our own to make sure that we're taking care of things on our side, to make sure our budget is really good.
Mm-hmm.
So academics, we're doing really well. Financially, we're doing really well. From a board perspective, we're getting really well organized. We have a much better onboarding. We have a whole binder now to onboard new board members. And we run the board meetings more efficiently and have a better structure to those things. So, we're just a better, well-oiled machine. We have a new evaluation system for Dr. Hill that we've gone through with him and kind of resituated all of that. So we kind of more updated it, mm-hmm. and just kind of, we've also just kind of come together more cohesively as a team and kind of even brought down kind of some of the initial tension after 21 and 22 when things were kind of really a little bit more tumultuous. And now we're at a good consistency and just calm in the district. And I think and that's where you're kind of seeing that we're really making some great gains, mm-hmm. Just in a lot of different ways. Our teacher pay is up. We've given some of the the highest teacher raises in the last 4 years, on average 38% over the last 4 years.
Oh, wow.
And our starting teacher pay went from $32,000 when we came on in 2021, and now we're at $50,000. So we were able to make that reach as well, mm-hmm. which was great because we want to be able to, attract and retain, teachers. We still need to bump that up a little bit as far as like our competing districts. Uh-huh. But we were able to at least get there at our starting teacher pay. Mm-hmm. We also were able to kind of resituate our insurance for our teachers and make sure that we were able to get that. Insurance has been crazy for everybody. I know everybody's premiums have gone up, but we were able to get that situated for our employees as well. And Director Lima and Director Jones had a lot to do with that when they first came on. They were on that committee. So it's been great. I mean, I would just say in a nutshell, from 21 to now, we are just, it's just better. Mm-hmm. We've just made a lot of strides, even in the midst of the challenges. And mm-hmm. so higher teacher pay, better financial positions, and higher academics. So it's just, and historically, we just haven't seen these strides in mm-hmm. really ever, or it's been decades.
Yeah. So you guys were kind of thrown to the wolves and taking it on by force.
Hey, we'll just take the bull by the horns. That's all we'll do.
Right? Yes.
Well, we've been a good team. So I'd have to say, between Dr. Hill, senior leadership, and then the board as a whole, all 5 of us, because, we can only, as much as people think I make decisions on my own, and I don't, we only make decisions as a board.
Yeah.
And so we make a good team, mm-hmm. All of us together.
Mm-hmm. So with the past couple elections, there's been very polarizing stances or candidates or, mm-hmm. whatever you want to say. But if someone was sitting across from you and they had very opposite viewpoints of you, what would you tell them? What would be the conversation that you would have with them about what your goals are for the school board and for the district as a whole?
Sure. No, that's a great question. I think when it comes to what our thoughts are on a lot of those, whether it's political things, in school, for me, school is just about school, right? It's about focusing on reading, writing, math, science, history. It's like parents and families want kids to go to school, mm-hmm. and they want them to go to school. Mm-hmm. And that's what my focus has been, about. If they want it to be about anything else, then that is the job of the parent and the family for them to take that on with their kids and talk about whatever it is that they want to talk to them about. A lot of things that we do have challenges with are really, that I think sometimes families and parents have concerns about, are things that we have a challenge with at the state level. So I think sometimes people can project that it's coming from the district, and it's actually not coming from the school district. It's actually coming from the state. Mm-hmm. So sometimes our hands are tied because it's either a law that we can or cannot do anything with. And so I've had to have some of those conversations with people because it's either something I I can't do anything about because it's a law, or what the workaround is. We've not banned any books, burned any books. We have pushed back on a little bit of curriculum because we're trying to make sure that curriculum is just sort of staying in the realm of it being just about school.
Yeah.
And yes, there are, state guidelines about what curriculum needs to be. And again, Colorado says in its state constitution, we're only one of 6 states that in the state constitution that school boards are about local control, which is pretty amazing, in that we are really about listening to our local communities. And so that is one thing where as a board, we are really to understand our community. And so one of the main roles of the board, besides policy and finance and, a lot of other things, is actually to approve curriculum. And so one thing when the district is bringing, curriculum before us, is we are actually really supposed to be looking at it, and going through it, because we are the conduit between the community and the district when it comes to those things. And so we are supposed to be looking at those things and saying, does this match with what we feel works with our community? And so that's the whole portion around local control. And so, we recently had a situation with the 4th grade, curriculum that we had some concerns about and questions. And so then they brought a different recommendation to the board, because we just kind of felt like there was some stuff that was a little outside of just the 4th grade, social studies curriculum, which is supposed to just be about Colorado history.
Yeah.
And so, again, that's totally under the purview of the board. What I would really say when I'm making my decisions as a board member is this the proper role of the school board? Like, what is the school board as a board member? What is my role? And if something is if this is not under the proper role of the school board, then am I supposed to be really, is that in my range of what I'm supposed to be really thinking about, and what am I doing? And so I think that really kind of goes for a lot of government stuff. I think sometimes we get ourselves outside of something that is that the proper role of what we really need to be focusing on.
Yeah.
So it's easy to get into the weeds on something. Doesn't mean you can't ask questions, but you can really kind of get yourself twisted into some knots if you're kind of getting outside of some of that stuff. So I really try to also keep my plumb line between thinking about, I'm the conduit between, parents, teachers, students, and the community, being that conduit, because you wear a lot of hats as a school board member. Yeah. You're advocating for a lot of people, and, you have to listen to a lot of different people and then take all of that in. So you're not just for any particular group. You have to think about everybody. You're that conduit between everybody. So
So if there's a community member, whether they're a parent, a student, if they have an issue, can they just bring it to you?
Yeah, we get emails all the time, or people will catch me, out and want to chat about them. A lot of times what we'll do is, if it's a particular complaint, say with personnel, we always ask if they've gone through the right channels first, to just make sure that they've had a, direct conversation with that individual first, before you're escalating something all the way up to the board. However, the board is always willing to listen. And then if there's just generally just concerns or thoughts that people have, that's what we're here for. We are the elected officials. And so people can always tell us things. And so, like I said, but if I need to be the person to kind of help guide them to say, hey, well, have you chatted with this person yet? Or have you done this yet? And then I usually tell people, well, go talk to them and then keep me posted on how that conversation went. I'm happy to kind of be that channel to help connect them as well. So, sometimes if they know me before knowing what else to do, I'm happy to help make that connection. But yes, I try to make myself as available as possible, either answering emails or phone calls or meeting with people, to just make sure that people can feel heard and that we're accessible to them. So.
And when is Election Day?
Tuesday, November 4th. Mail-in ballots will start to go out middle of October. And so, we just need people to remember to get out and vote because it's an off year. So a lot of people they forget that every year's an election year. I think people need to remember every year there's always going to be something on the ballot because even on the off years, you're going to have the school board and city council races. And so, we're just trying to remember trying to remind people that there's an election this fall. So.
Great. And I'm sure you have lots of upcoming events. So if anyone has questions, want to learn more about you, certainly let us know and we can put some of those, we can attach them at the bottom of the page so that they can come out and hear more from you. Yeah,
we would love to. Yeah, we have some meet and greets, or I have my candidate webpage, which is just Andrea for Kids, the number 4kids.com. And you can contact me there, or I'll get you some events, or I have a Facebook page as well, and happy to answer any questions or meet with anybody. So, we're not able to make, there's lots of forums that people want to invite us to. There's a lot to try to cram in. It's a very short campaign season. By the time we get our petitions in August, and then the election is November 4th. So we can't always make everything, and sometimes we have to pick and choose between sometimes the best uses of our times, and we still have families and everything. So while we try to make as many things as possible, it doesn't always happen, but we try to do as much as we can. So definitely, if we can't make those things, I want people to be able to reach out and get their questions answered.
Great. Well, thank you so much. Yeah. We have so much more to talk about, but we'll have to have
back again. Yeah.
Yes. Thank you for joining us today, and we'll look for the election November 4th.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
All right. Thanks.